Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. Honestly, I wasn't. I had just come back from the gym a little earlier than usual, tired, still chewing on a protein bar when I walked up to our apartment door and heard voices. My wife, Tara, and a few of her friends were gathered in the living room. Nothing unusual. She hosted brunches often. What made me pause was the tone, her voice, loud and gleeful in a way I hadn't heard in months, maybe longer. I swear, she laughed. He still thinks he needs to earn me. It's adorable. The room erupted in laughter, followed by the clinking of mimosa glasses. I stood frozen outside the door. Something in her tone felt off. I turned the knob slowly, almost unconsciously, but didn't open the door all the way. "Girl, you've got him trained," another voice chimed in. I recognized it, Jenna, one of her old college roommates. "You must have locked it down in the bedroom." "Oh, please," Tara replied, her voice taking on this smug, almost mocking cadence. "I barely try anymore. Why should I? I'm the prize here." He knows it. He acts like every little smile I give him is some kind of blessing. Laughter again, sharper this time. Something about it made my skin crawl. Does he still do that thing where he leaves notes in your car? What was it? "Just because I love you," or something like that. Someone else added. "Yeah," Tara scoffed. "He did that last week." I rolled my eyes so hard I almost sprained something. I mean, I get it. He's sweet. He's trying. But let's be real. The chase is over. He already caught me. Now he just stays grateful that I haven't wandered off. A sick warmth spread through my chest, not affection. It was a shame. Cold, suffocating shame. "You know what my mom used to say?" Tara continued. "Make him feel lucky every day, and he'll worship the ground you walk on. Never let him forget who's the prize." More laughter. Another toast. To Tara, the prize, someone shouted, and they all cheered like it was a victory party. I didn't open the door. I backed away like a burglar who'd realized he triggered the wrong alarm. I didn't know how long I stood there in the hallway, hearing her list off moments I thought were meaningful, turning them into punchlines, dissecting my affection like it was some science project she'd already mastered. They were talking about me like I was a fanboy who'd won backstage passes, as if being married to her was some rare privilege, and my effort to be kind, attentive, and loyal was an act of desperation instead of love. She had called herself the prize. But it wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it. Like she genuinely believed I should be groveling every day just to be near her. As if she'd leveled up by default, and I was supposed to keep proving I was worthy. What struck me most was how easy it came to her. She didn't hesitate. This wasn't some drunken rant or careless joke. It was a worldview, something she'd internalized so deeply it didn't even register as cruel. It was just fact to her. And her friends? They weren't surprised. They weren't appalled. They applauded it. I walked back down to the stairwell, still in my gym clothes, my bag slung over one shoulder, heart pounding not with rage, but with clarity. There was no dramatic scene, no confrontation. I didn't kick the door open and scream, "How could you?" That would have given her the moment. Made me the fool in front of her audience. I wasn't going to feed the image of the desperate man pining for his prize. Instead, I just sat in my car, gripping the wheel, staring out the windshield like I was waiting for something to materialize in front of me, an answer, maybe, or a way out. I started thinking back through the last year. All the times I surprised her with her favorite coffee, left notes tucked into her laptop bag, planned weekends around her schedule. All the times I asked her how she was feeling, how her day went, and genuinely listened to the answer. All the sacrifices I made without ever expecting anything back but appreciation. And now I knew. She didn't see any of that as love. She saw it as proof that she was above me. That afternoon became something I'd replay in my head more times than I'd like to admit. It was the first real moment I realized something vital had died in our relationship a long time ago, mutual respect. And without it, all the love in the world felt pointless. I wasn't her partner. I was her audience. But if she thought I was going to keep clapping while she performed her superiority act, she was in for a surprise. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had just decided to stop playing the role she had cast me in. And when the curtain fell, she wouldn't even hear the door close. It's strange how quickly your perspective can change once the illusion breaks. One moment, I was a man deeply in love with his wife, still making excuses for her distant behavior, chalking up her lack of warmth to stress or fatigue. That evening, I didn't return home until after midnight. I parked a few blocks away and walked, hoping the cool air would clear my head. I needed time to think, to absorb everything I'd heard. When I finally entered the apartment, the place was quiet. The faint scent of citrus and perfume lingered in the air, A reminder that hours earlier, she had been here basking in applause for her self-proclaimed title of the prize. She was already asleep, curled up on her side like nothing had happened, like she hadn't gutted our marriage in front of an audience and toasted to it. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a moment. I used to think she looked peaceful when she slept. Now, I couldn't see peace. I saw a woman who thought she had her husband wrapped so tightly around her finger he couldn't even breathe without her permission. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, taking a mental snapshot, not of her, but of myself, of who I was in that moment. A man staring at a relationship that had become a prison built of silence and imbalance. I had been the one constantly working to maintain harmony, to patch the cracks before they widened. And she had decided that effort was weakness. The next morning, she greeted me like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey," she said, sipping coffee in her robe, scrolling through her phone. "You were out late." I didn't respond right away. I just nodded, poured myself some coffee, and took a seat across from her at the kitchen island. She didn't look up. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. And that was the beginning of a shift she didn't see coming. That week, I started watching. Not spying, just observing. I noticed how she'd leave her dishes in the sink without a second thought, expecting them to disappear. What stood out most was how transactional everything had become. My affection had turned into currency she spent freely without ever intending to repay it. She expected admiration like it was rent owed. One evening, we were getting ready for dinner with her cousin and his wife. She came out of the bedroom wearing a red dress, heels clicking against the hardwood. "Do I look good?" she asked. I looked at her. Objectively beautiful, yes. But in that moment, something inside me rebelled at the question. Because I knew what was really being asked. "Do I still have you on a leash? Are you still chasing?" "You look fine," I said flatly, and turned back to adjusting my collar in the mirror. She blinked, caught off guard. No wide-eyed admiration, just a neutral response. And for the first time, she didn't smile. That night at dinner, she dominated the conversation, as always. She interrupted her cousin's wife to retell a story they'd already heard twice before, laughed too loudly at her own punchlines, and subtly dismissed anything I said with phrases like, "Oh, he's always like that," or, "You know how he gets." Every time she did, I felt the walls closing in. I realized I wasn't just watching her anymore, I was detaching. With every dismissive comment, every sarcastic smile, I stepped further away emotionally. And she didn't notice. Or maybe she thought the leash was still firmly in her hand. She had no idea that I wasn't chasing anymore. I remembered the anniversary I planned last year, how I surprised her with a weekend getaway she barely acknowledged, how she spent half the time texting her friends and the other half criticizing the hotel's dated decor. I remembered the countless mornings I brought her coffee in bed, only to be met with a mumbled thanks before she rolled over. I remembered birthdays where I gave thoughtful gifts while she handed me something generic, usually last minute, always impersonal. The worst part? I had accepted it. For years, I convinced myself that real love was quiet, that it was about patience, about enduring when things got hard. But that wasn't love. That was imbalance disguised as commitment. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, she looked at me and said, "You've been quiet lately." I shrugged. "Just tired." "Of me," she joked, but there was a sliver of something real beneath it. Insecurity? Hard to tell. I didn't give her the satisfaction of an answer. She smiled faintly, thinking maybe that meant she still had me. But inside, something was already gone. I was reclaiming something I had forgotten I even had, my dignity. She thought I was lucky to be with her. She didn't realize she'd spent years depleting a man who was once generous with his heart. And when that generosity runs dry, no apology, no seductive smile, no late-night flirtation can refill it. I hadn't left yet, not physically, but emotionally. I was halfway out the door, and she hadn't even noticed the silence was no longer passive. It was purposeful. I didn't change overnight. That's not how real shifts happen. It's never a single moment of clarity. It's the slow accumulation of realizations, a quiet decision repeated every day until it becomes instinct. I didn't wake up one morning with a new backbone or a sharper tongue. I just stopped waiting for something from her. And that changed everything. The first time she noticed something was different was so small it probably didn't even register at the time. She called from her office around noon. "Hey, could you swing by and drop off that binder on my desk?" "I forgot it. I'm in the middle of something," I replied calmly. You'll have to come get it. There was a pause. In the past, I would have already been in the car, binder in hand, treating her oversight like an emergency. This time, I didn't move. Okay, she said finally, tone clipped. I'll figure it out. And she did. But it was easier for her when I solved the problems without hesitation. That was the first thread to come loose. More followed. She asked if I could call her hairdresser to confirm an appointment. You've got the number, right? She said, tossing it out like it was routine. I do, I said, but it's your appointment. A look passed across her face, confusion, disbelief. Since when do you mind? Since I realized it was never my responsibility. Again, no shouting. Just a shift in tone. Neutral. She didn't say anything back, but she looked at me like she was recalibrating, as if trying to map the new terrain she hadn't agreed to walk on. That's when I knew the power had always been mine. I had just been giving it away. The change wasn't just in what I said or didn't do. It was in the way I carried myself. I started waking up earlier, not to make her breakfast or pack her lunch, but for me. I'd jog before sunrise, clear my head, lift weights at the gym. There was something sacred about sweating for myself instead of bleeding emotionally for someone who didn't appreciate it. I stopped canceling plans with friends just because she made a last-minute request. She noticed. At first, I could see it confused her. She'd ask, "You're heading out again?" Or, "You didn't wait for me to pick the movie?" Small things that meant everything to her because they used to be signs that I was orbiting her. Now, I wasn't circling. I was grounded. One evening, as I buttoned up a new shirt to head out for drinks with a few colleagues, she stood in the doorway watching me. "You've been really distant," she said, arms crossed. I didn't turn it into a fight. I've just been busy focusing on myself. Her expression faltered for a second. "You didn't even ask if I wanted to come." I met her eyes. "You didn't ask if I wanted to be mocked in front of your friends either." That hit harder than I expected. She stepped back slightly, like she'd touched a hot surface. I could see it flash through her memory, maybe shame, but not enough to apologize. "Instead," she said, "you're really going to hold on to that?" "I'm not holding on," I said, slipping my watch on. "I'm letting go." She didn't know what to say to that, and I didn't wait for a reply. That was the night I realized she was trying to pull me back, not out of love, but out of discomfort. She was used to being the sun. Now she was just another lamp in the room, and the glow wasn't as bright when I stopped staring at her. The subtle power shift disturbed her. She started doing small things, nothing big, just gestures. Cooking dinner more often. Texting me during the day with check-ins she never used to send. Wearing lingerie to bed, casually pretending it was just because she felt like it. I didn't reject her outright. But I didn't reward the sudden effort with a return to the old patterns either. She wanted to know if I was still chasing. She asked one night, voice lower than usual, "Are you still in this with me?" I looked up from my book. "I'm still here, aren't I? But it doesn't feel the same." I nodded. "Because it's not." She pressed. "So what, you don't care anymore?" "I care enough not to beg anymore," I said. "I care enough to stop mistaking disrespect for compatibility." That didn't land well. She left the room, muttering something under her breath. I didn't follow. I wasn't chasing after people who ran from accountability anymore. In the following weeks, I could feel her reaching. She would bring up memories out of nowhere, reminding me of our honeymoon, of nights we stayed up laughing. There's a difference between love and reverence. I had once placed her on a pedestal. Now, I saw her eye to eye, and what I saw wasn't a prize. It was a person flawed, selfish, and deeply uncomfortable being viewed without admiration. One Saturday afternoon, she sat on the couch and watched as I packed a gym bag. "You didn't tell me you had plans." "I don't need to." She frowned. "You've never been like this." I was. "You just didn't see it." "Because I was too busy proving myself." She didn't respond. Instead, she said, almost like a plea disguised as sarcasm, "Well, don't let your prize slow you down." That made me pause. I looked at her, really looked, and realized something important. She still thought this was about her. Still thought this was some phase. A cold shoulder that might thaw with time. She didn't understand that I had redefined myself, and she didn't get a say in who I became next. "I'm not running," I said. I just stopped waiting. And then I walked out the door, not in defiance, but in certainty. Because when someone tells you they're the prize, it means they believe you've already lost something if they walk away. But the real loss? That happens when you finally understand you've been chasing someone who was never even looking back. By the time fall rolled in, my withdrawal from tarot wasn't just emotional, it was visible. Subtle at first. Fewer shared meals. More nights spent out or quietly reading in another room. I didn't slam doors or give silent treatment. I wasn't withholding love as punishment. I had simply stopped offering it where it wasn't cherished. I started spending time with people who didn't know me as Tara's husband. Colleagues invited me out for drinks or weekend hikes, and I said yes. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just wanted to breathe without being reminded that I was once a man who begged to be seen. I dove into a new freelance design project, something I had put off for years because she didn't think it was stable enough. Now, I didn't ask for her input. I worked into the night, headphones in, a smile on my face. She noticed. Of course she did. One night, she came into my workspace and leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, wearing a dress she hadn't worn in years. "You don't look at me anymore," she said. I didn't turn around. "You stopped seeing me long before I looked away." She didn't answer right away. The silence was thick. I could feel her wanting to argue, to pull me back into a familiar rhythm, her provoking, me pacifying. But I didn't rise to it. She walked away without saying anything else. It was a pattern now. She'd test the waters with vague remarks, try to spark a connection, but always stopped short of admitting she had failed me. Her ego wouldn't let her kneel, not even when the foundation beneath her was cracking. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't distant out of spite. But I was no longer accessible on command. I had gone from being endlessly available to quietly elusive. She'd invite me to events I used to bend over backward to attend, and I'd decline without explanation. She planned a dinner for some of her work friends and asked me to join, her tone softer than usual. "They'd love to see us together." "We haven't been, us, in a long time," I said. "I think they'll survive." Her smile faltered. "You're really enjoying this, aren't you?" I met her eyes, calm. "No. I'm just done proving myself to someone who never deserved the audition." That struck a nerve. She turned away abruptly and slammed the bedroom door. But slamming doors doesn't work on someone who's no longer waiting behind them. A week later, she did something bold. She booked a weekend getaway for the two of us. A luxury spa resort upstate, the kind of place she used to beg me to take her to. She left the reservation on the kitchen counter with a note in her handwriting. "Let's reset. Please." It wasn't an apology, but it was as close as she'd ever come. I stared at the paper for a long while, and then I tossed it in the trash. Later that evening, she asked, "Did you see what I left for you?" I did. "And I'm not interested in resetting something that never worked. This marriage," I said, "was always about you. Your needs, your wants, your validation. I spent years shrinking myself so you could feel taller. You're twisting things," she shot back, a mix of panic and defiance. "You were happy when I was happy." "No," I corrected. "I was quiet when you were happy." "That's not the same thing." She stepped back like I'd struck her. But there was no venom in my words. Just clarity. She had built a kingdom on the illusion that I'd never leave. That no matter how many times she cut me down with passive insults or subtle indifference, I'd be there, waiting, clapping, grateful. She thought I'd stay because I once did. Because I had always returned. But that version of me didn't live here anymore. In the days that followed, she tried to reclaim her footing. She dressed up more often, cooked my favorite meals, laughed loudly at my jokes, even when they weren't funny. She tried to bring back the woman I once fell for. But it was too late. It wasn't about the laughter, or the dresses, or the food. It was about respect. And that had died the moment she called herself the prize and saw my love as submission. I started making arrangements quietly. Looked at short-term leases in a nearby town. Transferred files from our shared accounts. Gathered documents. No arguments. No warnings. Just action. One night, as she was watching a show on the couch, I sat down beside her, not too close. "I'm moving out," I said. She turned to me slowly, disbelief spreading across her face. "What? You heard me. I'm not asking for permission." She blinked. "You can't be serious." "I've never been clearer." Her voice rose. "You're going to throw everything away?" "Just like that." "You already did," I replied. "The night you reduced me to a footnote at your little brunch performance." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like she wanted to scream but couldn't find the words. I stood. "This isn't about revenge. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm just not willing to live on my knees anymore." She didn't chase me down the hall, but she didn't speak either. The silence that followed was deafening, but not painful. It was peaceful. I spent my last night in the apartment sleeping soundly for the first time in months. No tossing, no inner debates. I had grieved already. This wasn't heartbreak. It was release. And when morning came, I didn't take everything. Just the essentials, my clothes, laptop, and a framed photo from years ago, before things turned. I wanted the reminder not of her, but of who I used to be before I gave myself away so completely. As I closed the door behind me, I knew I wasn't running. I was reclaiming. What she didn't understand, and maybe never would, was that being the prize meant nothing if you treated the one chasing you like a fool. Because eventually, the chase ends. And when the runner stops, the game is over. The first few weeks after I left were quieter than I expected. No storm of texts, no furious voicemails. Just silence. At first, I wondered if she was relieved, or if maybe she still believed I'd come back. But the truth was simpler. She didn't know how to respond to someone who had stopped reacting. Her world was built on leverage, on knowing how to pull strings, how to spark a response. Without that, she had no map. I moved into a modest apartment a few towns over. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. My space. No carefully curated decor to impress her friends. Just quiet and clarity. I started building routines that didn't revolve around someone else's approval, early mornings at the gym, late evenings working on projects I'd shelved for years. I reconnected with people I had unintentionally neglected, friends I'd drifted from because I was always too busy playing the good husband. They noticed the difference almost immediately, because I seemed centered. About a month after I left, I got the first message from Tara. Short. Simple. Can we talk? I didn't answer, because I had nothing left to say that would matter. We had passed the point of conversation. There had been too many moments when she could have chosen kindness and didn't. Too many times she treated my vulnerability as a tool to manipulate, not as something to protect. A week later, another message arrived. I miss you. I didn't realize how much until now. That one I stared at for a while. Because it confirmed what I already knew, she didn't miss me. She missed the man who made her feel invincible. The one who answered every call, chased after every whim, and forgave insults because he loved her too much to do otherwise. That man was gone. And the one who had taken his place wasn't coming back. Still, I didn't block her. I wanted her to realize what it meant to lose not just a partner, but the version of me she never appreciated until it was too late. Word got around. Some mutual acquaintances reached out. She's not doing well, one said. I think she really regrets how she treated you. Another added, she told us she didn't mean it, the stuff she said at that brunch. She was just showing off. That was her defense. It wasn't even denial. It was admission soaked in vanity. As if her cruelty would sting less if it had been for entertainment. Eventually, Tara asked to meet in person. She phrased it delicately, like a peace offering. Just coffee. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. And against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I got there first. When she walked in, she looked almost exactly the same, but something had changed. Her posture was less confident. Her gaze didn't carry the same sharpness. She sat down slowly, hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she needed it for warmth. You look good, she said. Thanks. A beat of silence. I know you don't owe me anything, she began, but I need you to understand, I was wrong. About everything. I didn't say anything. Just let her speak. I thought you'd never leave. I got comfortable. I said things I shouldn't have. I treated you like an accessory, not a person. I nodded slightly. Not out of agreement, but acknowledgement. I'm not asking for another chance, she continued, voice quieter now. I know I don't deserve one. God, I was so full of myself. I genuinely thought I was the best thing in your life. I raised my eyes to meet hers. You weren't. That landed hard. She blinked fast, eyes misting, but she didn't look away. You were, I said, the most demanding thing in my life. The loudest. The most exhausting. But never the best. She swallowed, clearly trying to hold herself together. So that's it. That's it, I said. Not because I hate you, but because I like the man I've become since I stopped trying to win you. She looked down, nodding slowly. You really did stop chasing. I had to, I said. Because somewhere along the way, I realized I wasn't chasing love. I was chasing approval. And I'm done needing that from people who confuse affection with power. Another long pause. I wish I'd seen you clearly back then, she whispered. You didn't want to, I replied. You wanted someone who made you feel adored without asking whether you deserved it. We didn't drag it out after that. There were no pleas, no desperate grabs for closure. Just two people sitting across from each other, one grieving a loss too late, and the other already walking through a door she never thought he'd reach. As I left the cafe, I didn't look back. Because I knew that final look would be for her, not me. She needed to see me leave. She had called herself the prize. But real prizes don't have to be defended with cruelty. They don't mock loyalty. They don't rely on dominance to feel worthy. And now, as I drove away from that last conversation, a strange peace settled in. Not the triumphant kind people imagine, where you walk away feeling victorious. No, this was quieter. A deep knowing that I had finally stopped asking to be chosen by someone who had always seen love as a one-way street. She was the prize? Maybe once. But now? Now she's just the woman who taught me how much it costs to stay loyal to someone who doesn't love you back. And I'm the man she'll spend years trying to find again in others, never realizing he only existed because he believed in her. Once. Never again.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.